exercise, which started one of the state's largest fires. The RFS says the fire, which threatened the city of Lithgow, was the result of live ordnance exercises on an army range. The Department of Defence confirmed explosives training was taking place on the same day and near to where the fire started, but it's refused to confirm the RFS findings and says it's conducting its own investigation. Will Ockenden reports.
The Mayor of the Blue Mountains, Mark Greenhill, is angry and wants answers.
I would have hoped that on a day like that, which was a dry day, hot day with the winds, that the Australian military would have known that it wasn't a good time to be igniting.
The state mine fire, as it's known, has threatened the city of Lithgow and other towns nearby for the last week. It's burnt through about 47,000 hectares of land and destroyed 3 houses and a handful of sheds. The Mayor of Lithgow, Marie Statham, says it could have been much worse.
We thought Lithgow would have not fared as well as what it has. We're very blessed that we didn't lose more homes. It's certainly something that should never have happened, I believe.
She says she wants to see more information and is not yet blaming Defence.
I guess the bottom line is that the public are wondering where the fire did start, and eventually there will have to be some inquiry into this to determine as to where this fire did start.
The New South Wales Rural Fire Service is more sure of when, where and how the fire started. Commissioner Shane Fitzsimmons says fire investigators have determined the fire was started due to explosives training on the Marangaroo Army Range.
The fire investigation, as is routinely the case with New South Wales Police, and I understand the cooperation of the military, we determined that the fire cause and origin that started last Wednesday was indeed started on a live firing range as a result of the detonation of some ordnance.
He was then asked if the Army was acting responsibly by carrying out explosives training the day before a total fire ban.
It's one of those routine arrangements that occurs on a live firing range. I'm not going to speculate on what was right or what was wrong. I'm simply focused on where did that fire start and how did it start. We do it routinely. We make announcements. I don't care whether it's someone lighting them, power lines, or in this case, an ordnance that was exploded. We made a commitment to investigate, determine, and advise once we knew. It was from very public comments early on that they were open and said, we may have started this and we'll work with the authorities. That's what they're doing. I don't think anyone's shying away from how this fire started. What we did do was an investigation to confirm the speculation that was around early on last Wednesday.
The New South Wales Premier, Barry O'Farrell, says he hopes that people remember the work the military has done to help combat the fires.
I also want to ensure that this doesn't detract from the efforts that Defence have made over the past week in assisting the state's emergency service battle these fires. I'm sure that Defence, the federal government, will make some statements around that.
The Department of Defence is still refusing to answer questions about the incident. On Saturday, Defence admitted that explosives ordnance training took place on the day the fires started. A Defence spokesperson says an investigation is underway. As to when it will be released, the spokesperson told AM she doesn't know and couldn't say how long it will take.
Will Ockenden reporting. There's plenty of smoke over the Blue Mountains this morning and there are still fires, but the nervousness and trepidation that was abroad yesterday has eased and people are back in their homes. In some cases, they're unpacked.
Okay. I want to address a couple of issues here. Part 1, line 1. If I had have sparked a fire yesterday with the steel blade of the brush cutter that I was using, and it was sparking every time I hit a rock, which is why I had pre-positioned buckets of water all over the place, ready to put out any little fires that I did start, and every time I saw a spark, I stood there and I watched to make sure there was no smoke. But if I had have started a fire, I would be financially responsible for all of the damage done by the fire that I had started, whether I started it with a brush cutter or a box of matches, and whether it was a total fire ban or not, because New South Wales is in what we call the permit season, which means you need to have permission to light any fire. I'm sure there's a get-out clause in the Constitution or something that means when the Army destroys civilian property they don't have to pay for it, especially if they don't mean to destroy it. But if I was one of the people whose houses had been wiped out by the 47,000 hectare fire that the Army lit with an explosives instruction course on a firing range, I think I'd want the Army to be paying me for the shed they burnt, or the house they burnt, or the car they burnt. So that's part one. Part two is the implications for what does it mean if the Army goes about using its normal weapons and its normal training, and in October, training with their normal weapons and their normal systems, unleashes a 47,000 hectare fire. In October. Well, I would say it indicates that there may have been a really good reason why the Australian Aborigines had spears and woomeras and boomerangs and nulla-nullas and waddies, but they did not have firearms. A couple of times during the sheep wars, the Aborigines scored a few successes by using fire as a weapon against the invading sheep and the sheep farmers. But I think we're going to find that maybe from September till April every year, as global warming makes the bush more of a fuel bomb, as the unhindered carbon emissions go on, we're going to find that Australia is a place where nobody can use modern weapons without risk of igniting giant bushfires. You're not going to be able to use mortars, you're not going to be able to use artillery, you're not going to be able to use tanks with steel tracks on rocky country, you're not going to be able to use tracer ammunition. So the Royal Australian Army has just demonstrated that all their toys are completely, utterly fucking useless. A total waste of taxpayers' money. All it's good for is setting fire to the assets that you're trying to defend. Yeah? That's how I see the Army lighting a bushfire on a firing range with an explosives instruction course. Now, they've never had this problem before because the firing range where they did their explosives instruction course, it's an old firing range. It probably dates to bloody World War I or World War II. And guess what? Global warming had not kicked in World War I or World War II. So the landscape and the fuel conditions have never been as bad in the old days as they are now. Al Gore is right to say that there is a proven link between climate science, anthropogenic global warming from carbon dioxide release since the Industrial Revolution, and bushfires. Anybody who says there is no link is exactly like the tobacco lobby denying that their product, their commercial product that they were making a profit out of, was causing deaths from cancer and emphysema and heart disease and strokes. The tobacco lobby didn't want to admit that. So they paid people to tell lies to further their cover story that the science wasn't proven, the science wasn't proven. Well, our bloody Prime Minister who goes out there to put in a back-burning effort on the weekend when it's pretty safe, he wasn't there on the fire line yesterday, was he? When it was pretty dangerous. He likes to say that there's no link between climate science, global warming and bushfires. I'm sorry to say that it's a case of confirmation bias, denialism. Look, we've got a third sea backroscope on the moldboard plough. You can now get 3 views of the fool who keeps trying to plough straight on through the tree. And that's pretty much what our Prime Minister's trying to do. He's trying to plough his way straight through the forest. He doesn't want to accept the science. He wants to go with his traditional economic beliefs. Now he's going to have to get used to the idea that September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April For 7 months of the year, the Australian bush is undefendable. Because if you fire a fucking big gun or drive a tank, you're going to set fire to the place. If you set off any explosives, you're going to set fire to the place. So the meek will inherit the earth, as the violently doubtful warrior atheists will clean themselves off the face of it. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.